What if I told you that communication isn't actually a skill? Stay with me for a moment here. Because what if it's just the visible output of a decision-making system running underneath? And that's what's broken. So I just got back from a cruise, a senior trip. We went on a cruise. So I went with 7 seniors, and we went and spent a couple in cruising around Mexico. And so I had a lot of time to sit and think about it. And we had this conversation about what decision making is and what leadership is, and also what communication is. Because these individuals, one of the tenets of our program, it's a homeschool program, but we do it through a community, and it is about critical thinking and communication. And I was thinking about the relationship between them. And this is kind of like my aha moment. And I just wanted to share it because it made such a profound movement on my life. It was just something that I'm like, I need to write down. I spent a couple of days journaling about it and writing about it and testing it. And I still have some testing to do, but I wanted to share it because it's a huge shift from what we're typically taught. It's a huge, it's a way to look at it that anyway, let's get into it. It blew my mind, and I think it'll blow yours too. So every leadership team I work with says the same thing. We need better communication. But when we step in and we start to diagnose what's going on, what they're really experiencing is decisions don't hold, conversations that circle, and a team that won't move without checking in. They become dependent on the leader, whether it's validation of like, great job, or I need the leader to validate the decision itself. But that's not a communication problem. That's a decision system problem. And until you fix the system, no amount of training will change what comes out of it. And so here's the aha moment for me. Communication is just the decision making made visible. Every conversation is a series of micro decisions: how you interpret it, how to respond, who owns it, who defers, what you want them to know, what you want them to think. Right now, your team is making those decisions on autopilot, and that's why they're stuck. And so here it is: communication is decision making. And most teams just don't know it. Most people, most leaders don't know it. But think about this, okay? Think about every conversation that happens. Some Someone says something to you. You decide how you interpret it. You feel a reaction. You decide how to respond. Something that needs to be owned, you decide to step up or defer. A conflict emerges. You decide to engage or protect yourself. These aren't communication skills. These are decisions, hundreds of them, like thousands of them, happening really fast and running on autopilot. You do these subconsciously, you do them quickly without even realizing it. Because when these micro decisions are unconscious, they're being driven by whatever the person's internal system is protecting, whether it's approval, control, safety, being right, success, whatever their internal system is protecting. That's what's driving these subconscious, unconscious decisions, these micro decisions that the communication is the visible result of. So, what leaders see, what you see at your level is, well, we have a communication problem. But what's actually happening is we have a team making fear-based micro decisions in every conversation. Think about this. Like, again, think of like every time you communicate, it's a decision being made and then you take action on it. That's what communication is. And when I thought about that, it really blew my mind. Like, test it. Tell me what you think. If you have a disagreement there, like, bring it to me so we can, because it makes the argument stronger if we can talk about this. But it's one of those moments that I needed to share this. And so, why does communication training fail? Because communication training teaches the output. Here's how to give feedback. Here's how to have difficult conversations. Here's how to listen actively. Even communication books and things. This is also why they fail as well. It's all about the output, but it never touches the operating system making the decisions underneath. It's like teaching someone to type faster on a computer with corrupted software. The keystrokes, like they're typing the letters, but because the output is still broken, it's still not working. You're still circling the decisions don't hold and you're circling the communication, even with clarity. And one of the things that I was thinking about too is most people don't realize that what clarity actually is, which I'll go into that another podcast. Um, it's a whole nother aha moment for me that I've had fairly recently, but just understanding more and going in deeper level. Because if our communication training never touches our operating system, that's what's making decisions underneath. These micro decisions that we make so fast that we don't even know that we're making them because it's an autopilot. So what is happening after communication training? And this is the typical communication training. This is the books and the corporate training and this is the even the videos you watch. People may use the new language for a week, but old patterns resurface because the internal system hasn't changed. And you're back in the same meetings having the same conversations, but you don't have a team that can't communicate. You have a team whose internal decision making systems, their internal decision systems, are running on protection mode instead of ownership mode. They're protecting their job instead of owning their job. They're protecting their role instead of owning their role. And there's a big difference in this because when you're in protection mode and you have your armor on, you can only go so far. But when you are in ownership mode, that's when you can take your strengths, take what's important to you, take your values and pour it into your role. So here's the crazy thing as you fix the decision system, the communication fixes itself. So, what has to shift in order to change this? In order to start fixing this decision system, this upgrade, is you need to go from unconscious to intentional. Your team needs to see that the micro decisions they've been making in every conversation and make them on purpose instead of on autopilot. Take a moment to let your brain catch up with your mouth. Wait for your mouth to catch up to your brain and to your heart. Take the action, take a breath before and move it from unconscious, just an autopilot into a very intentional, even a decision of like, how do I want this to come across? Think about it and then own it. And then you need to go from protection to ownership. As we talked about the importance of this just a moment ago, it's because when that internal system is protecting ego, approval, safety, success, people defer, they hedge, they circle, they don't say what's really on their hearts. They don't say what will actually get a result change or a goal. When it's oriented towards outcomes, people decide and move. But when it's oriented to protection, protecting ego approval, that's when people defer and we hedge, we circle, we settle, we keep our mouth shut, we protect. We don't say what needs to be said in order for the room to grow, in order for these big decisions to be made. And then the third thing we need to do is we need to go from individual dysfunction to team alignment. It's not enough to care for one leader to upgrade their system. I will state this. This is something that I know from even my work in therapy and in families. If one person changes, there is a ripple effect of change that happens no matter what. Because if one person upgrades their decision making system, if one person upgrades their internal system, everyone else is going it's gonna like put them off kilter a little bit because they're not gonna know how to react in the moment. Their autopilot no longer works when one person changes. So it does make a shift when one person steps up and say, okay, I'm going to upgrade my system. But in order to go for full team alignment, you've got to do it together as a team. You've got to have a shared clarity on how decisions get made, who owns what, and what settled really looks like. But the thing is when you go from unconscious to intentional, when you go from protection to ownership, and you go from individual dysfunction to team alignment, your conversations get shorter, your decisions stick, and people stop circling because there's nothing to circle about. Your goals get stronger, your team elevates and becomes stronger together because you've moved from protection. You take the time, you have that trust, you have that psychological safety that you can trust your team to have your best interest, to share a half-baked idea. We've talked a lot about my one client who had that person on our team who was afraid to have those half-baked ideas. She wants a fully baked, concept before she brings it, but it was hindering the process for the whole team. Decisions were better when she would bring a half-baked idea and then they could bake it together. Then you can, because things are stronger when you work together. So the result of this, because it's not easy, it's simple. You start thinking about your decisions. What's crazy about this is once you start thinking about the decisions that you make and you're like, okay, before I say anything in return, I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to count to two before I respond. You realize how many things you just pop off and say, how many decisions. And I think that the last statistic I've heard is we now, I think it was like 10,000, but when you start looking at these micro decisions, and if you see communication as a micro decision system, we're at hundreds of thousands of decisions every day. No wonder why that we're exhausted at the end of the day, even when we communicate. And our brains want to automate it. It wants to be an autopilot. But then that puts us in protection mode instead of ownership. And so these concepts are not hard to do, but they do take time. They're pretty simple. We have to choose it. So to go from unconscious to intentional, from protection to ownership, and from individual dysfunction to team alignment. Because when we do that, and I'm going to tell you again, the results from this, conversations get shorter. Decisions stick. You're not circling, you're not rehashing a decision, and people stop circling because there's nothing to circle about. You go into a meeting, you each say your piece, you talk about why it's important using your internal system, using your upgraded internal system, talking about your values. Why does this perspective matter to you? And then so others can see and get that feel for, I understand, and here's how my perspective plays into that. So what's the cost? What's the cost of this? Because I know you're asking yourself, you're like, oh, well, I'll just start thinking differently. Okay, well, if that would have worked, it would have worked already for you. But the thing is, every circular conversation is a symptom of a decision system running on autopilot. So when we are just circling and having these same conversations over and over, it's because each person in that circle is running on autopilot. So autopilot is really expensive in time and speed and trust and talent and resources and in information. We can't grow. We can't be the goal-getting machine that you want to be on autopilot. The autopilot doesn't go anywhere interesting or new. It sticks to the path. It sticks to what's comfortable. And this is where we have to change things. Information comes so fast. We've got information overload, and we need to start looking at those micro decisions we make and this communication that we want to be better at and realize that we don't have to work on 90 different things. When we make quicker, better, more precise decisions based on an upgraded internal system, not an autopilot internal system, everything else falls into place. So a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to a group, an organization, and one of the questions we were talking about gaps. We were talking about different identity and alignment gaps. And one of the questions that I got was, which gap do I see most often? And it was after. I'm one of those people that I replay conversations. Like we talk about circling and things. That's something that I am working on myself. The more I understand decisions, the less I am circling and rethinking the conversations. But I was thinking about this, the answer that I gave, and it wasn't a wrong answer. It was a good answer. I talked about my point of view, which one I see, but then I thought about it as I was driving home, and I'm like, I answered it wrong in that I should have let them know it doesn't really matter which alignment gap they have. They're all fixed one way. And do you want to spend more time diagnosing, or do you want to get in and fix the system that's causing the problem in the first place? Because every circular conversation is a symptom of a decision system running on autopilot. that expensive autopilot that it gets you the same goals as last year, gets you in the same, like at the end of the year, you'll be in the same place you are now by design, because that's what autopilot does. Autopilot goes in same destination, same route, same, maybe a few deviations for weather, and but overall, it has that same locked in position. Otherwise, autopilot doesn't work. So we need to remove that locked in position and it starts by changing these micro decisions. This is why I'm not a communication coach. This is why I help teams fix the internal operating system that drives everything they say and they do. Because if you fix that, communication isn't something that you train, it's something that flows. It's something that comes from these decisions you make. And I have a methodology for diagnosing what a team's internal system is protecting, which it's usually those aha moments and how quick, once we realize what we're protecting, we can change it in the moment, and reconfiguring it so decisions hold and conversations stop circling. You have to stop replaying the decisions, or instead of, because even the way you replay them is a little bit different. And this is what we do in the Align Leader series, is we talk about this internal system and we look at the 3 steps it takes to change it. That's it. Like, it really is simple. So next time your team says they need better communication, I want you to ask yourself, do they know how to talk? Or is something underneath driving dysfunction that no script or framework will fix? Is it something that they are, because the decisions and the conversations are happening over and over in the exact same way? Even if it's slightly different words, you can tell when there's a pattern. And I know as a leader, you see the patterns in your team, but do you see them in yourself? I know you can, if you step back and you look, and you can almost guess, like, and typically word for word, how someone's going to react to you, or what feedback you're going to get from someone, or how their mannerisms are going to be, right? I know you know this. I know, I think pretty much every leader that I've worked with who values their people. I've worked with a leader. We did not work together for very long, but it was a boss relationship. He didn't value his people. He wanted them to respect him. And so with that, it was a whole nother conversation. But next time someone in your team says they need better communication, or if you're thinking my team needs better communication, I want you to ask yourself, do they know how to talk? Because most likely they do. Or could it be something underneath driving the dysfunction that no script, no framework, no communication training will fix? And if your team keeps having the same conversations, in the same meetings, in the same conflicts, and communication training hasn't fixed it, let's talk. I do a sample session of the Align Leader series where we can get to the underneath the surface and we can diagnose what is going on. What is your internal operating systems that need to change? Because a lot of times it's not the communication, it's the decision making that is subconscious. All right, friend. Well, I am really excited about this moment. I'm really excited about this idea, and I'm going deeper with it. I'm going to do a little research. If you know anything about me, you know how much I want to know the why behind it. But the research shows so far that it's really aligned. Communication is simply the visible output from decision making. Yeah, communication. I said that right. Communication is the visible output from decision making. Change the decision making, you change the communication. Change that internal system, your decisions and your communication shifts. It upgrades. You upgrade your communication, or if you want an upgraded communication, upgrade your decision making, which is upgraded by your internal leadership operating system. All right, friend. I know this was a lot. I want you to think about it. I want to know what you think. Think about it. Every communication you have, is it driven by decisions? Like, DM me on LinkedIn, text me, call me, send me an email. Email's the worst way. Seriously, LinkedIn is the best way to chat with me fast. And it is me chatting, not a bot, not a team member. So, but let's talk about this. How can we, if we update our decision making, how does it naturally flow into updated communication? All right, friend, with that, if this is something, if you recognize this, if you want to upgrade your internal operating system. If you want to see how alignment, because again, alignment isn't about new pieces, it's pieces are just out of place. When we put them together, when we understand what's going on, things start changing quickly, quickly. And I want that for you. All right, friend, choose joy until joy chooses you. If you are enjoying this podcast, I would really love for you to send it to a leader who communicates a lot and you know that they can benefit from this or they would have a thought about this. Also, send me a rate and review on Apple, on Spotify, anywhere you listen. It helps me to understand what's landing. It also helps the magical algorithm and get this podcast to other leaders just like you who are also leveling up their leadership, who are tired of the old way of doing leadership training and really want to embody a leader's purpose, to become the leader that they know that they can become and mentor and guide your people in a way that gets results, not just understanding. All right. With that, have a wonderful day. Choose joy until joy chooses you. Bye for now. Before you go, I just want to say thank you for spending this time with me. I know your attention is valuable and I don't take it lightly. If this episode gave you language for something that you've been carrying, I'd love for you to give me a rate and review on the podcast. This helps the conversation reach others and other leaders who need to hear it. It also helps me see what landed and what you want more of. And if leadership starts to feel heavier than it should, you don't have to figure it out alone. You can book a leadership strategy call in the show notes, tammymariecoaching.com/call. And until next time, lead with clarity, stay grounded in who you are, and choose joy until joy chooses you. Bye for now.